I'm Allendale's chief meteorologist Ryan Martin with a look at your midday weather update. Surface analysis as we take a look at action still shows an approaching frontal complex in the northern plains. What's been real interesting about this cool front is it's actually been able to trigger a little bit more rain than initially had been looked at. Got some rain totals in through the Red River Valley in eastern parts of North Dakota and into northwestern parts of Minnesota. Had some places reporting up to an inch and a half, 2.5 inches overnight last night. That's a little better than was anticipated. And what's really interesting is it all came ahead of the cold front. Usually you get your heavier rains to pop up with more storm action behind the front. Now, it does look like we're going to be able to get this front to pass through the rest of the northern plains and into the upper Midwest in a somewhat benign manner. Best rains are back near the low, which is still kind of tucked into eastern parts of Montana. We're going to keep an eye on this front as it wants to move across the Corn Belt between basically now and the rest of the week. I'm looking for moisture to really start to develop in earnest over the western Corn Belt, probably as we go through the day tomorrow. There's a fairly formidable band of clouds already running from Missouri all the way up through Minnesota. But that also means that we're not going to be seeing as much energy firing off or being able to build into this as we get going. Moisture looks to be fairly significant over the western Corn Belt here to start, but as the system moves east late in the week, Friday into early Saturday morning, honestly, it's not as impressive. I like rainfall totals half to 1 inch. We'll say a quarter to 1 inch Corn Belt wide. I'm going to skew those to the middle and upper end of the range over the western Corn Belt, middle to lower end of the range over the eastern Corn Belt as this system moves through. No real changes from what we put in our online write-up this morning, but these are changes from what we saw yesterday. Now have 3 systems between now and mid to late week next week instead of 2. The second system looks to be a lot more formidable, and the models have not backed away from this yet for this weekend. Looking at an area of low pressure and a fairly strong front to work into the upper Midwest as we go into the Sunday time frame. And then as it moves to the south and east, it's going to bring good thunderstorms over the rest of the Corn Belt as well. This will be a system, again, that comes out of the northern plains. I like half to 1.5 inch rains out of this. Coverage about 80% of the entire Corn Belt. We see another system then over the Corn Belt for next Wednesday through Thursday. Maybe, if you twist my arm, we'll at least allow it into early Friday in extreme eastern parts of the Corn Belt. That system, half to 1 inch range. So, if you look at the next 10 days, kind of lump them together, put everything together, yeah, we've got some drying going on in parts of the Corn Belt, and we will have dry periods in between. But I think we can see at least 3/4 of an inch of rain over about 90% of the Corn Belt, and there will be locally higher amounts. So for soybean planting that may be just a little bit behind in some areas, we are likely going to be seeing showers have to be dodged again. Now, some of the way behind areas, for example, Kansas and Missouri, looks like the best rains or the biggest rains are going to be staying outside of those areas, so maybe there's something to hang your hat on there. Speaking of Kansas, speaking of the hard red winter wheat belt, are looking at a system trying to work into Nebraska, South Dakota over the next 24 to 36 hours that will try and throw a little moisture down into Kansas. We're mostly watching Thursday. If there is scattered thunderstorm action that works into Kansas, it will be Thursday, and I'm looking at coverage at about 40% or less. I'm not sold on this being a big Kansas event. If it is a big event anywhere in Kansas, I do think along and north of I-70 is going to be where it's at. So if you're hearing this in that area, be prepared maybe for some strong to severe weather to break out Thursday into early Friday. We don't see any of the moisture shifting south into Oklahoma. We're also looking at another the southern plains system. We'll call it central plains system as we head toward midweek next week. Most of these next systems have better rain from I-70 northward than they have from I-70 southward. Temperatures are going to be a big item here. And you know what? We've been talking about, normal to slightly below. The latest NOAA 6 to 10 and 8 to 14-day outlooks came out, kind of agree with us on that. I don't see us running away to the upside on temperatures at all. Now, by no means are we talking about a major cold snap, but I think you can look for temperatures over the next 10 days to 2 weeks to average probably normal to about 4 to 5 degrees below, both for daytime highs and nighttime lows. Evaporation rates, as long as the sun is going, should be good, and we're going to need those good evaporation rates if we get the rains to come through a large part of the country like we're expecting. That's the way things are stacking up at midday. Again, no significant changes. Does look like the forecast is just a touch wetter over the next 10 days to 2 weeks. If you've got any questions on the weather, give us a call at Allendale. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin.